Good morning, everyone. Can you hear those online in the meeting okay?
Colin, can you hear us?
Yes, thank you.
Excellent. All right. It is 11 o'clock. We do have a quorum. Chair Klein is absent, so I believe you are running the meeting in his absence. If you do have any challenges running it virtually, there are some people in the room here that you can refer to keep the cadence going if needed.
Great, thank you so much. We'll call the meeting to order at 11:01 a.m. on Monday, February 2nd, Groundhog's Day, and ask Assistant City Manager Turney if we could do a roll call.
Sure. Chair Klein is absent at this time. Vice Chair Robertson?
Present.
Member Adams?
Here.
Member Harris is absent at this time. Member Kenny?
Here.
Member Oliverio? Here. Member Pawnee?
Here.
Member Stitzer absent at this time. Mr. Van Houten?
Here.
Mr. Vice Chair, you do have a quorum of the Redevelopment Agency Advisory Board, and I'll turn it back over to you for public comment.
Thank you so much. I just want to confirm that the meeting was properly noticed and everything is good to go.
Yes, sir. You are in accordance with open meeting law.
Thank you so much. And at this time, we'll seek any public comment from either people online on the Zoom or in the room present there at City Hall. Those public comments are limited to 3 minutes per person.
Anybody seeking public comment? We have none in the room and none online.
Seeing none, then we'll move forward to the next item on the agenda, A3, approval of the agenda today for the meeting on February 2nd, 2026. If I could have a motion to approve that agenda.
Sure, Jay Kinney, I move to approve the agenda for February 2nd.
Nadia Oliverio, second.
Thank you very much. All in favor of approving the agenda for February 2nd, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Nay. Any abstentions? Motion passes. Then we'll move on to approval of the minutes in item A4 from the Monday, January 5th, 2026 meeting. Those minutes are included in your packets. And I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the January 5th meeting from anyone in the room or on Zoom.
Nadia Oliverio, motion to approve.
Like Van Houten, I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Motion passes. Note for the record that Member Harris has arrived here in the room at 11:04. With that, we'll go to item A5 and have a staff liaison report, I think, from Mr. McCardle.
Thank you, Member Robertson. Brian McCardle, Revitalization Manager. So this month, it was quite a busy month, 2 RAB meetings and a special meeting, but the baseball deal was approved. So we will have a commitment to keep baseball in the region through 2049, with an additional commitment of $40 million to be invested in the next 5 to 10 years in and around the movie theater. So that is great news. We do have a couple TIF deals still coming. We did receive the preliminary gap analysis back for the Keystone and Fifth project, but we are just cleaning up some numbers. So we do expect to have that back before this body at next month's meeting to review that gap analysis. We also have some restore projects coming along. The Yuzu Sushi was a round 1 restore recipient. They did receive their certificate of occupancy, and so they should be opening up sometime soon. You should go take a look at the place. It is quite the improvement inside, total transformation. And we do have, we should see some permits coming in for the Siegel properties, the Nevada and the Truckee Lane building and our Cortez. And then last, you've probably seen some renovations starting and the demo at the Oddfellows building, which is where 477 Doc Holliday's building. We don't really know what to call it. It's had a couple names over time. those are just some brief remarks. There was a NAIOP meeting this past week that covered the GSR deal, the ballpark agreement. They did have some renderings on what that could look like in the future with utilization of the space in front of the grass space in front of the existing Greater Nevada field, as well as the development on the south site, south from Ballpark Apartments. And then they covered the University Village plans, and Josh Terriot, who owns Chronicle Capital, his adaptive reuse of a lot of historic buildings on 4th Street, including the old Reno Brewing building. So those are general updates. We have a busy agenda, a busy month, and a packed agenda for March. So we should be seeing some more items coming up next month. Any questions?
Mike Van Houten for the record, is the ballpark people still gonna build a second ballpark apartments on the south side? Or are they completely like?
I don't believe they haven't. I don't think they, Brian McCardle for the record, they no longer have an option on that lot. So I think Simon Properties, is it Simon Group, Simon Properties, the Simon family is going to look at developing that themselves. They may do in conjunction with a master developer, but
Very cool.
at this time, I don't think Scenic Investments is Pacific Development. Sorry, so Pacific Development has an option on that lot. I'll also mention the Reformer project. It's no longer the movie theater. It's we're no longer referring to it as Livingstone's Church. It's now the Reformer project that is coming along. That's going to be about 10 different mixed uses. So we're very excited about it. They do have some renderings that I think people will be very excited about. They are demoing the project as we speak. So they are turning 2 of the largest theaters into 1 main theater. So they're doing some seismic in there. And they're actually going to add a mezzanine level interior to add 8 office units inside the building. So we're really excited about it. It's coming along. They're going to move pretty quickly on that project.
Are they gonna be, Mike Van Houten for the record, are they gonna be able to get around the daycare issue that was brought up before, where you have to have an outdoor?
We believe they have enough space to make the daycare work. Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And Nettie Oliveria, who's the construction entity on that?
Sierra Builders.
You know, Mike Van Houten for the record, you know the 10 different things that they're considering for the,
No, they don't have tenants locked in yet, but it will be
like the general uses?
Yeah, it'll be 2 restaurants, maybe 1 cafe and 1 restaurant, 4 retail uses. The lobby of the movie theater will be kind of a co-working kind of cafe space. And then there will be a spot for the River Rangers as well, and a wedding venue.
Gotcha, okay.
On the corner.
Very cool.
Any other questions?
Thank you very much, Mr. McCardle. Any other questions online, Caitlin?
Nope, no questions online.
Thank you very much. With that report, then we'll move on to item B1 in the agenda, presentation and update on the city's public engagement practices, including community identified preferences and feedback to inform the strategic prioritization of engagement methods and practices. This is a discussion only item.
Mr. Chair, this is Ashley Turney, Assistant City Manager. If I could give a brief introduction and update of what this item is before you today. We have asked Cynthia Sparza to come and give a brief update on how the city does their engagement side. This came from some conversations with board members talking about strategic priorities and the things that come before this board of how we can better help inform you to then better inform the RDA. So part of this process is you're going to see successive presentations over the next handful of months from city staff that help to really define and show you how the city supports engagement and how our plans come forward, how those are formulated. And then ultimately, when the city council votes on something, that's what sets the priorities. And then as staff brings forward programs and operational discussions and contracts, those are to execute the plans that council has told us they care about. As we know, RDA has been dormant for nearly 2 decades. And so the plans that we have Many of those plans that redevelopment would actually execute have been adopted by the city side. And so as we work to help better create brighter lines between what the city does and what the redevelopment side does, we felt it important to educate you on city components, so that way you could be better prepared and understand when we bring forward something, it's not coming from nowhere, and it helps to establish where these plans come from. So I'll turn it over to Cynthia to give us a brief presentation. She's given this presentation to council. And so what you'll see, as I mentioned, in the handful of months will be what's come before council, so that way we bring you up to speed with us.
Perfect. Thank you, Ashley. It's so nice being here. I haven't met you all. My name is Cynthia Sparz, and I'm the Director of Community Engagement and Services. Part of the work that my team oversees is how we engage with the public, how we problem solve. In addition to multiple things, I work very closely with the DRP. We just had a meeting this morning with regional partners. For today's presentation, like Ashley mentioned, just going to go over our current practices, some work we did last summer, which I can't believe it was 6 months ago, and how we are implementing that feedback today internally, and then we're going to roll out our ultimate public engagement plan. So bear with us as we get through this. But again, these are all processes that currently exist that ultimately are seeking to get input from all members of our community and getting subject matter experts to provide that input as well. And then we'll go into, I think you all have heard about the downtown plan.
We did the downtown.
So that was your first one that went through a similar process. And I know that you all have multiple agenda items in the near future with all the other plans that are interconnected with the RDA and downtown. So currently, these are all the methods we have for public engagement. We try to create different avenues targeting different members of our community. Some members of our community cannot attend board and commission meetings, so we provide those resources online, whether it's a survey, an online form. We've also done meet and greets in neighborhoods if we're trying to resolve an issue for a neighborhood, brainstorming sessions. But when we look at these avenues, I would say that board and commission meetings are certainly the more formal approach to gathering that input. And that is in compliance with the Nevada open meeting law. There's minutes, I understand, and I've actually seen, I think, a couple of you providing public comment for council as well. So this platform exists, but we also recognize, like I said, it doesn't work for everyone. So we want to be mindful of all of our audiences. Comment forms are always available for multiple projects. You have the planning commissions as well. And then as we develop plans or as we're seeking input on a proposal or an ordinance introduction, perhaps, these are all the avenues that we currently use. Again, we want to ensure that the community is providing input on issues that are important to them. So by having multiple ways of doing so, we're hoping our ultimate goal is to gather that information and provide that balance as well. So why does this matter and why is this helpful? We do this not only because it's the right thing to do. We are a public governmental agency. We need to ensure that we are serving our community in the best way we can, but also this supports trust and transparency with government, ensuring that our information is accessible online. When we talk about access, we also want to ensure that we are taking into account lived experiences and expert that work in these fields have ways to provide that information. Again, boards and commissions, I would say this body serves in that capacity, but we want to ensure that we provide that citywide. As items do come forward to council, we want to ensure that as staff, we are presenting a very holistic approach to a problem, ensuring that all voices are included in that process. And what we know is that if we do not do that in the way that people provide input, once it goes to council, it may not go very further, right? It may stop at that point and then staff goes back and gets input. So our goal is ultimately to have all the information presented in a way that is better informing decisions for our elected officials, taking into account input that is provided by boards and commissions, and ultimately being just more efficient with everyone's time. We all know everyone's time is very limited, very valuable. So we want to ensure that that's all captured in the process. So when we talk about engagement, there's a model out there, it's called the orbits of participation, and how members of the community participate in the public process. As members of a board and commission, you all serve as advisors, and you play a really important role in sharing your specialized knowledge on a topic to make recommendations to electeds as well. I know during public comment, those comments are, very important for council to hear, but also for everyone else, myself included. Just learned about a couple of things in the RDA. I feel like this is a whole new world for me. So it's exciting to get input from you all, so I can ensure that my information that I am sharing, if we're meeting with the public, are accurate, and we're again informing the community. And again, going back to decision makers, having that information in advance is very important with this process. So I think a lot of these pieces are interconnected. I may be reiterating some of these pieces as well. But again, in this space as advisors, your input is incredibly important, valued. And I also know that you all are volunteering your time. So thank you for taking the time to engage with the City of Reno. We, as a team, last summer, did what we called the public engagement review process to better understand what the community wants to hear about, learn about, and how they want to engage. Again, being mindful of our multiple audiences, we held multiple drop-in sessions. We had 6 drop-in sessions, 2 community meetings. We had 2 focus groups specifically for boards and commissions to provide input. And then we received 358 service responses. The intent of this process, again, was to get an idea, is there a better time of day to hold meetings? Are there barriers where we hold the meetings? Are our venues accessible? Do you prefer to have multiple topics at one meeting, or do you want more specialized topics? Public safety, that would be one idea, right? Or do we want to talk about everything in Ward 1 at one meeting? So the input that was provided helped guide our next steps, but I do want to highlight some of the public engagement preferences that were shared from members of the community. Point of contacts. Certainly, members of the community would like to engage directly with city staff and their ward representative as well. Meeting locations, parks made it to the top. Maybe in the summertime, springtime, we could have outdoor meetings, public libraries as well. And then City Hall came in third as well. Times, weekday evenings, which again, we traditionally work 9 to 5, 8 to 5, or whenever, our days go long. I know there's a couple business owners here as well. I'm sure you're working all the time, but from the public's perspective, they do prefer weekday evening meetings and or afternoon meetings as well. The format, this was an interesting one. What format do members of the community enjoy? Do they want more structured meetings like this? Do they want more of a hybrid option in person? So that was kind of across the board. It was equally split. The structure itself, a lot of members of the community that participated, 79% prefer informal structured discussions. Again, that is in alignment with some options, such as a focus group for boards and commissions, not so much, but because there is structure per Nevada open meeting law, but that was helpful for us as we build out opportunities to engage with the public. And then again, there is a preference for single topic discussions, and then feedback. Online surveys and forums was rated significantly high, which is great to hear. For us, that's very cost effective. We have the tools available, we build out the survey, and then we analyze that information before we take it to council for a project. And motivation, just see people are seeking more information. Access is certainly important. And then topics of interest. That's a little funny. Parks and recreation. A big topic for the community, open spaces, budget, of course, and development. At that point, I don't think we had RDA as an option because we weren't at the stage we are today. But just wanted to provide that information for you all. And with all this information, what we did, we have adopted a new engagement framework. It's from the International Association of Public Participation. And through this framework, we're currently rolling out some discussions with a couple projects to categorize what we are intending to do with an initiative into, are we trying to inform the community? Are we consulting? Are we involving, collaborating, or is it something we want to empower the community to do? So by adopting a framework, we are standardizing our internal processes and creating those structures in place so we have consistency as we engage with the community. So this is the model we have adopted. The city of Boulder uses it, Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, and a couple others. So we were very thankful that they gave us the green light. Yes, you could use our framework. We are not plagiarizing anything. We just simply have to give them credit in the work we do and the plan we're rolling out. And to bring this all together, you've heard about or had a presentation about the downtown action plan. These are the other plans that have that direct connection to the RDA, to downtown, to the Truckee River, which is one of our, I would say the gem of downtown in my opinion, but I'm probably a little biased. Through these plans, public input was provided. So it truly is a full circle. We start with an idea, a concept, gather that information, work with staff, work with consultants, and then these plans are presented to you for implementation, guiding principles and next steps. So as we go through any of these processes, this is what we do on the back end internally. And I am here to answer any questions you may have. I know there are multiple agenda items today, so I don't want to take up too much of your time. Happy to connect afterwards as well. And if you have any input on new tools that you are seeing or you're seeing other communities use or something that you prefer, certainly let us know. We can incorporate that as well.
I have a question.
Thank you very
Kenny,
much.
for the record, I have a question. How involved with the downtown action plan are we also involved with the university, since obviously we have such a huge population of the university who, one, we would like to try and keep around here, and getting them involved with housing affordability and just overall walkability for them. So I was just wondering, are we tied in up there right now? Are you actively speaking with them and the students up there and trying to tie that in and keep them down here?
Mm-hmm. I know we were just chatting about downtown in another meeting less than an hour ago. From our end, what we are doing, we meet quarterly right now with Associate Vice President Troy Miller, I believe, Associate Vice President. And so we stay in tune with what is happening downtown, there's a lot of moving pieces right now with the university as well. So looking at different properties that they're planning on potentially acquiring, how that is going to impact connectivity to downtown. We also work closely with their student engagement office, which really is a division of student services, to keep the students engaged, whether it's through volunteerism, just getting a better look into local government operations and how we operate, providing that transparency for them to understand how this work impacts their 4 years or 5 years on campus. And we also actually intern quite a few university students as well. So we're really trying to provide a bridge to local government. It could also help us in the future for recruitment, right? We want to ensure that we are attracting talent and retaining talent. So by doing so, we're bridging those gaps. But I think we keep a pretty good pulse on engagement on campus. And we actually have one of our interns here. She's a master in social work and is working with community engagement, which you wouldn't think social work connects to government if you look at it from a high level, but it's so interwoven in everything we do in quality of life and government effectiveness.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Sparza. I was wondering if you, just in terms of your experience with other cities, what are people doing in the face of the kind of increasingly fractured landscape of communications generally and communication with citizens specifically because of that. How is that affecting your work, would you say, today?
I'd say our biggest challenge is getting the information out there. I did not mention in here, but I do want to highlight that our communications team oversees 5 different social media accounts. I think they have roughly 340,000 followers. So that really is an essential tool for us to get information out. What this work is trying to do is get information in, so pulling in information. So we do that by building relationships. We have pretty lengthy community lists that we work with nonprofits. And if there's a topic of interest for a specific corridor, we have those contacts. So we really focus on building those one-on-one connections with groups. We did something along 4th Street, started a couple of years ago with business groups that has been very successful. We are modeling that same approach in a different part of town that needs a little bit of attention as well. So really, the one-on-one connections are very important to the work we do. So if you ever see City of Reno tabling somewhere, we're doing that very intentionally and deliberately to identify gaps and build those relationships with multiple members of our communities. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions?
Mike Van Houten, for the record, I just wanted to add, I think your communications team does an excellent job of countering a lot of the misinformation that happens out there, particularly like in your comments of your posts on social media.
Yeah.
And I know that's kind of a recent development. I think that's great. And I appreciate this presentation because, you can tell the public sometimes there's 30 times about a meeting, and then there's always going to be people that said, I didn't know about it. And so really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I will pass that along to our communications team. They do a great job.
I'll second that to say that the good humor of the social media team is appreciated.
Yes, thank you for what you do.
Absolutely, my pleasure. If you all have any questions, feel free to reach out. And again, if you have other suggestions or ideas, we are open to any way to get the information out to our community. Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Esparza. With that, we'll move on to item B2 in today's agenda. Recommendation on the adoption of the rebrand of the Reno Redevelopment Agency to include the use of doing business as name Reno Redevelopment and Urban Placemaking Agency, also known as REAP, and the associated brand asset, color palette, and icon style. This is an item for possible action, I'll note for the record, and pass it over to Mr. McCardle.
We have our Economic Development Program Marketing Manager here, JP Wirtz, who's going to give a presentation on the rebrand.
Good morning, everyone. I'm JP Wirtz, RDA Marketing Manager for the record. So really the point of this coming back in front of you guys today is we're walking you through the final stages of our rebrand. And the goal of this item today is to receive your recommendation that we will take to the Redevelopment Agency Board for final action. And I will keep this, we're not going to rehash the entire brand platform. We're just going to kind of keep this focused on the elements that we're making decisions on today. Thank you. So really quickly, high level, why rebrand the agency? This is about clarity and distinction, not just some fancy designs. Really, the number one purpose of this is to help establish the agency as a distinct entity, aligned with the city but separate from it. It reflects the agency's modern approach to redevelopment, placemaking, and reinvestment in our downtown and surrounding areas, and finally improve the understanding and engagement with our partners, stakeholders, and specifically the public, who we are. I think the most important element is the rebrand helps people understand who we are and what we do. I think that's going to be agreed. So what we are asking you guys to do today, provide a recommendation to obviously take to the Redevelopment Agency Board, specifically on the DBA name Reno Redevelopment and Urban Placemaking Agency, also known as RE-UP. And then recommend a preferred visual identity option from one of the 3 color palette options that we're going to show you. We've already selected a logo last time that this came in front of you guys. Today, we're solidifying the color palette option of that. And then finally, we will show you 2 different icon options for your recommendation as well. So first, all right. So, and again, this is just kind of to cover what I just chatted about. Included, we're talking about the EDA name today, the color palette options, and the specific icon options. What this rebrand does not include is the Reno Redevelopment Agency will still be the legal name of the agency. There's no change to our statutory authority, and there's no change to any of our policies or programs. This is simply a rebrand and marketing communication style. All right. So first element of this rebrand that we're asking for today is the proposed DDA name, Reno Redevelopment and Urban Placemaking Agency, also known as RE-UP. And the reason for a new name to improve public understanding, obviously, of our role. We both do urban placemaking and redevelopment, including that as an expansion on just redevelopment, really helps clarify what we do. Provide a clear and approachable public-facing name for folks to interact with, and this will go along with website and social channels and things of that nature. It maintains legal and statutory continuity. At the end of the day, we are still the redevelopment agency with all of the authority associated with it, and the legal name Reno Redevelopment Agency will still be the legal name. But really, this allows us flexibility to talk about ourselves across programs, partnerships, communication styles. So for the color options, we've seen this logo before. This is the one that you guys recommended to the agent or the redevelopment agency board, and that they selected on October 22nd of last year. And so council direction at that time was to explore a couple different color options. Initially, we had shown them the green and #1 color option. And so working with our consultant, we came up with color option #2 and #3 as well. So take a look at them. Next one. So after looking at all of the various logos in the Truckee Meadows, Resonance has recommended, despite council's action, asking for blue, that we not, or some exploration there, they do not recommend leading with blue. And for all of the obvious reasons right in front of you. It blends into the Reno mix, not quite as much of an exciting change. And blues lean more institutional, as you can see from all the various institutions. Here, not to say that these are bad logos in any way whatsoever. It just shows that the landscape in our area is filled with blue logos. Resonance's recommendation is that we go with the original color palette that they had prepared, the green. Signals change, green means go. It's a sense of renewal and ties to the Truckee Meadows and nature in the area immediately around us.
And money.
It does also signify money and wealth. That is an element of green as well. Yes, that's a very good observation. All right. So, and the 2 icon styles that Resonance has also come up with us for selection is option A and option B. They're 2 different stylistic approaches. We internally, along with Resonance, agree that option A is probably a little bit better aligned with the aesthetic that we're going for. Nevertheless, we did want to present these to you guys to get your recommendations from. All right, so we are on to the recommended motion. Told you I'd get through this quickly. So take a look at this, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys may have. And we can go back to any of the individual slides to look at either the icons or the color palette options.
Mike Van Houten, for the record, I'm still really hardcore on the green for the exact reasons you mentioned. This town is so full of blue, and I think that the point is to distinguish the redevelopment agency from the city. And also, we invested quite a bit of money into residents, and I consider them to be the experts. So I really like the green, and I really like the option A of the logo. I think the square logos just look a little bit dated to me for some reason, where the option A looks a little bit more modern. So that's where I'm going.
Nettie Oliveria, for the record, I totally agree. And we did actually bounce around the question of the color palette on our previous deliberation, and pretty uniformly said that same thing. Man, there's a lot of blue.
Kara Harris, for the record, I would just ditto both of them. I would move forward with the recommendation, and I can make a motion if I need to.
Perfect, go for it.
I'd like to move forward with the recommendation from the agency of green and the icons that are not the boxes, the A option.
Jay Kenny, I'll second it.
We have a motion on the table then. Is there any further discussion amongst the advisory board than we've already encountered? Seeing none, I'll call the question and ask everyone in favor of the motion on the table to adopt the green branding and icons without the boxes to say yay if you are in favor.
Yay.
Yay.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you very much.
You guys so much.
Mr. Vice Chair, this is Ashley Attorney, Assistant City Manager, for the record. I believe it was the intent of the motion maker and the seconder to include the AKA as re-up, as well as this board had already decided that, but I just wanted to state that on the record so there's no confusion for our minute taker, unless I've got it wrong.
That is correct.
Thank you so much.
Correct.
Thank you very much. And with that, we'll move on to item B3 in today's agenda, presentation and input on the district activation plan. This item is for discussion only.
Hi everyone, Rachel McIntyre, City or Redevelopment Agency Placemaking Manager for the record. Today we're excited. We're going to talk a little bit about the expansion of a pilot program that we launched in 2024 and expanding this out to the districts and merchant associations within the RDA. So let's talk first about what the district activation pilot is. A couple of years ago, we launched an activation pilot really with the focus to support placemaking, activation, and economic vitality as we look to establish neighborhood identity, specifically in the downtown core. That goal will continue with district activation pilot. It builds on the success that we've had with our downtown activation, and it aligns with our RDA goals, activating areas, neighborhood development, small business support, and district vibrancy. So why we did it? We, in downtown, we have a ton of underutilized and vacant spaces, or we did. We had West Street Plaza, that was a concrete slab, City Plaza, concrete slab, and Locomotion Plaza, concrete with beautiful mural, but no furnishings. So what happens when we don't have the furnishing and we don't have an incentive to inspire folks to exit Wingfield or exit Idlewild Park and come downtown for their events is it's hard for promoters and community members to really see the vision of what's possible. We also needed a low barrier to entry to inspire new people to come down, bring their ideas to life, and activate our downtown core with exceptional programming. We had a desire to see new promoters enter our space. There are folks all around our community who have incredible ideas, and they're executing their ideas in small scales, say in local bars, businesses, restaurants, nonprofits, but they didn't really know how to get their idea off the ground and to scale to expand into a broader community perspective. We wanted to support creatives, entrepreneurs, and small businesses. And one of the cool things that this program did is we have 12 new business licenses that got started. 12 new promoters came to the table and got City of Reno business licenses, and they're operating and expanding their programming. Our pilot was modeled for quick implementation. We added in a mentorship component, so I personally work with all of the promoters on everything from budgeting, permitting, marketing, all the way through day of execution. And then we wanted them to understand how to reiterate and grow and scale their events. All in all, out of the 12 activations that we launched, we have seen all of them are continuing, which is fantastic. A couple that I did want to highlight. Reno Antique Fair. Has anyone here had the opportunity to attend or participate in the Reno Antique Fair? So that promoter, her name is Laura. Laura was hosting events in our local bars and restaurants that was called Reno Vintage Fleet. And Reno Vintage Fleet had over 30 different vendors that she was working with at any given event, and she had a wait list. What was interesting about that, though, is she had no idea about the permitting process for special activities or special events. And she wasn't charging or monetizing it at all. She was just doing it because she herself was a vintage collector and she wanted to create something cool. We knew that when we were looking at what the next generation of legacy events are for downtown, that we needed something that was already happening, maybe underground, or something that was already happening within the community, but maybe wasn't being brought to life for the masses. So we looked at starting a vintage fair. We went to Laura. Laura said, I'm going to do you one better, and we're going to make it an antique fair, because antiques are actually what our community needs. And yes, we'll have vintage, but antiques open up our event to a broader audience. Laura participates on a circuit of antique fairs from Oakland, Sacramento, Roseville, and now Reno. They all happen on a Sunday. And it's a circuit because these vendors travel from city to city every month hitting these events. And she's been participating in these for over 10 years. She knew that Sunday was going to be the day. And specifically, she said, it has to be the third Sunday. It's the third Sunday. We're going to get all these vendors. We're going to be a part of this circuit. It's going to really help with marketing. Laura has had tremendous success. So she launched last year with 5 activations in downtown, closing Virginia Street from 2nd to 4th. Her events are averaging about 6,500 people per event. And it's people of all walks of life, all demographics, all ages. And she's expanding this year into 9 events. She's also taken on the responsibility of activating the National Bowling Stadium for her holiday event. So bonus, we're activating an underutilized space with one of our partners at our CBA as well. So I already jumped the gun and we started talking a little bit about impact and outcomes. What's been really great, we focused on what we called our priority plazas with this first activation pilot. We said City Plaza, West Street Plaza, and Locomotion. We, at the same time, utilized ARPA funds to make investments into the infrastructure at 2 of those 3 plazas, furnishing and providing new infrastructure at both Locomotion and West Street Plaza. I'll talk a little bit about West Street, what we saw first. With West Street, we leaned into small, community, weekly recurring events. And we have a couple community partners that we work with there. The first that we'll talk about is the Reno Philharmonic. We partnered with the Reno Phil and said, hey, we would love to increase community access to all of the incredible music and programming that your organization offers. Reno Phil was like, well, that sounds fantastic. So they brought to life what they call Harmony on the River. Harmony on the River takes place every Tuesday downtown at West Street Plaza, June through August. It's family friendly, and they do programming that's specific for kids' education in music. The adults love it all the same. We also partnered with a local promoter group. They're called the Biggest Little Tribe. They also did a weekly activation every Wednesday at West Street Plaza, bringing out DJ, food trucks. They partnered with Sierra Tap House to run the bar. It was a huge benefit to Sierra Tap House having these activations this year with bridge construction, Wingfield, and Michael has just shared how much he really has appreciated the increased activation there. We also did some monthly. We did Flicks on the Bricks. We partnered with the Cordillera Film Festival. That event happens August through October. And we partnered with Desert Beats Collective, and they launched a monthly, why am I spacing on the name?
House on the Tracks.
House on the Tracks.
No, that's House Party. That's at Locomotion.
The rail, not the rail?
That is with
On the
Long Beach
rail?
Music Festival. What are you guys?
Oh,
We have another monthly.
Party on the River.
No, we
Beats,
talked about
Beats
that.
the River.
Beats by the River.
Beats by the River.
Because my brain
There's
is
so
spacing.
many things.
So many activations. But those folks are great. They did 6 different events monthly over at West Street Plaza. And the plaza, what's really great is the recurring activation helps to teach our community that that space is open, and it's open for them to come and hang out and leisure and enjoy in a way that they never have before. And we're very, very excited to bring all of those events back again this year for another season. We had Locomotion Plaza, which y'all just named a bunch of the events. We partnered with Offbeat Music Festival and the Offbeat Music Society to launch Off the Rails, which is an outdoor summer concert series. All of these events are free and open to the public, which is fantastic. They brought in a bounce house and kids craft zone and vendors and a massive stage, and partnered on bringing music discovery to life outside of just the Offbeat Music Festival that takes place in October. We partnered with Dead Ringer Analog Bar and House Party to bring House Party Plays the Tracks to life. Between Off the Rails and House Party Plays the Tracks, those are all monthly activations that take place June through October. Those events each saw between 3,500 and 4,200 attendees per month. Fantastic. We launched Dia de los Muertos celebration in partnership with High Sierra Music Entertainment and also Desert Beats Collective. So we had some really incredible activations downtown. And I'll close it out with the activation that we did at City Plaza. The one plaza we haven't yet invested in the infrastructure to really make those enhancements of shade and furniture. But the really cool thing is we have Dancing on the River. I know a lot of river activity here, highlighting our greatest asset here in the city. But we have Dancing on the River. That was with High Sierra Entertainment. And I love this story because Andres is kind of the pinnacle of what we were hoping this program would accomplish. And Andres was a community member. He's a veteran and he's a coder. And he just had a fun idea. He's got kids. He misses going to salsa night. And he was like, I want to bring salsa night and bachata night to the community and the public. And so he applied. He got a City of Reno business license. He got his promoter's liquor license, and brought Dancing on the River to life. He's entering his third season. That is a monthly recurring event that happens. And he's averaging about 3,500 people per month. We saw great demonstrations, small scale, large scale activations. And what I love the most is how these folks are continuing their events on an ongoing basis. So let's talk about the districts. So everything we just highlighted was funded with ARPA funds. ARPA funds are coming to a close in December of 2026. So we've looked at the RDA and we said, okay, one of our primary goals in placemaking is neighborhood identity and neighborhood development. We know that events and activation help with both of those goals. So we're going to be proposing that we're launching the activation pilot program in each of our districts that exist within the RDA. So what that would mean is funding specifically for district pilots in Brewery District, the Riverwalk District, and the Midtown District. Continued focus on low-cost, high-impact programming and specifically recurring events. We want to help our neighborhoods and our district leaders understand how an event can go beyond an episodic impact. And what that means is it's awesome. It's amazing to have the event that happens one time in the year, brings out 100,000 people, and it's exciting and it's great for economic development. We love that. And we may or may not have another proposal for that coming in a couple months. But we know that these low cost recurring events are what keep people coming back again and again. And we're hearing it from our bars, we're hearing it from our restaurants, and we're hearing it from our retailers that right now they're hurting and they need people and they need help getting more people into their neighborhoods and into their businesses. And what we know through the activation pilot downtown is that this program does help solve for that. So next steps, we would be looking to roll this out tomorrow, which is fantastic. We'll be getting our announcement out to the districts. We've already partnered with each of the districts as well, so they know that this information is coming. They're very excited about it. What they're most excited about is that the workload doesn't fall on them. The cool thing about the district activation pilot is that it is open to any business or any promoter in the community who has an idea to submit their idea. Each district will be able to nominate one leader from their district or their board to review the applications for their neighborhood and be a part of the selection process there. These district leaders, most of them are on a volunteer basis. Those that are not still just have a tremendous amount of work on their plate. They don't necessarily have the bandwidth to do is recurring events on a weekly or monthly or quarterly basis. So we're very, very excited. We'll be tracking the metrics and the impact of these events as well. And really looking for that long-term strategy and how we're going to get the investment on a sustained basis and activation happening on a sustained basis in our neighborhoods. With that, that's all I got for you. Open it up for any questions.
Jay Kenny, for the record, I have a question. Now that it's been announced that Hot August Nights is coming downtown, is there I'm assuming there's probably lots of opportunities that could probably happen for Midtown or something like that to bring that in, since you're saying you're going to activate this tomorrow. I mean, are there areas that you could team up with there
for Hot August Nights.
To drive them down into Midtown now since it's downtown?
Yeah, so we've worked with Hot August Nights quite a bit. And Hot August Nights is it's an incredible event. An incredible event that really likes their footprints as they are. And so they have their sponsors, and their sponsors have some pretty strict exclusionary requirements. So at this time, I'm not saying it's never going to happen. At this time, they're already doing a new blueprint and a new footprint, and they have a larger exclusionary partner that they're bringing on this year that is going to inspire them to keep their event downtown exclusively, and specifically within the Virginia Street corridor.
Okay.
Mike Van Houten for the record. So is it only that one person from each merchants association can bring forward events to, or can like other bars or other people do that too? Because I can foresee some political issues with that, with the merchants association, if it's just one.
So that's a great clarification. So the great thing about this program is it's open to anyone, any bar, any business, any promoter can submit an application for the neighborhood. What we've done is we've invited each district to nominate one person from their board to help us review those applications.
Gotcha, okay.
We want the district leadership to be a part of deciding what happens in their neighborhood, especially when we're using government dollars to do it. And then just one quick point that I'll go back to, you brought up Hot August Nights. While Hot August Nights may not be the option for the big legacy event to spread the love, there are other events that we do have that option. And I think we're working on those conversations right now, and there are organizations that are amenable to having district activation sites during their large scale events. Stay tuned.
So I have a question too. So for, gosh, probably 30 years that I can think of, the Arts and Culture Commission has done cultural event grants.
Yes.
And the source of that funding is room tax. And there was quite the process of reviewing the applications for these cultural event grants. Not as much money being assigned to it, a max of $5,000. But I'm wondering if there's collaboration with that agency to just kind of look at best practices, and to Mike's question too about who's like the gatekeeper or who's going to be able to present and get money to present, or be reimbursed to present. If there are a lot of ways to be ecumenical about that. And so just wondering.
Yeah, so we work with arts and culture really closely on all of our sponsorship programs. So I'll address a couple of things here. So we already have a program in place and an application process in place. Megan Berner from our arts and culture is on the review committee for that already. So Megan will stay on the review committee for this. Additionally, we do have the arts and culture grants. That stays. That's not going away. We also still have the City of Reno sponsorship, which is also room tax funded. That's not going away. So if you're a promoter and you say, I want to start a farmer's market in Midtown, and your event meets all of the arts and culture grant criteria, you can apply for that. And it's up to $7,000. Yeah, your event just has specific criteria that it has to meet. You can also apply for City of Reno sponsorship, and you can submit your event for this. So the idea is that we're decreasing the barrier to entry in a variety of ways. One, through mentorship, but two, through interdepartmental and cross-agency funding. So we want to work collaboratively with the agencies that are providing this funding source as well. For larger events, there's also the RSCDA, the Downtown Reno Partnership. They have their grant program as well. So that goal here is to ensure that folks have as many options to bring their ideas to life and to increase activation as possible. And for the review committee will be an interdepartmental review committee. So it'll be reviewed by myself, Megan Berner. We have the district leadership that'll be participating, as well as Jake, the RDA.
So Mike Van Houten for the record. So it won't just be the individuals on the boards from the Merchants Association. There's other. Okay, good.
No, and that's intentional. We want to ensure that if Mary Poppins has a great idea, and Mary Poppins has all of the data to back up her idea and the marketing partnerships to back up her idea, but maybe no one knows who Mary Poppins is, we want her to have an equal playing field to have her idea heard.
Okay, good.
And Nettie Oliverio again, where exactly is the funding for this coming from? I understand through 26 it's ARPA, but past that?
This specific program will be coming from the RDA, not through ARPA. The ARPA dollars are how we funded the downtown activation pilot for 24 and 25.
Ashley Attorney, Assistant City Manager for the record. And just to add, this line item was included in the budget that this body reviewed and recommended to the RDA. So the funding will come from the specific area in which the events will be held. So Midtown will be from RDA 2, 4th Street will be from RDA 2, Riverwalk event will be in RDA 1 funds. And you reviewed that as part of your budget.
Sorry about that.
No, I just thought I'd add the extra detail that nobody asked for.
Yes.
Any other questions for Rachel?
Just to add, Mr. Vice Chair, this item came forward. We had talked about this before. This body reviewed the application and submission comments for the restore process. And then you gave us recommendations. We incorporated those in and then went out to execute the program. What's in front of you today is a similar mock-up that we're asking you to review Rachel's presentation, the overall application, ideas if you'd like, submission changes, things you think. And then she will incorporate if there are any changes to run out tomorrow and get this out on the ground. So you'll see more of these coming forward that you've recommended the budget for it, RDA approved it. Now we're bringing you the operational piece for you to say, yes, I love this. Hey, have you thought about adding in an extra point for events that happen on Tuesdays? Because I really like Tuesdays. That's your thing. And we'll continue to bring forward this framework to you and then go execute in order to get the money out and into the community faster.
And I do have, I'm sorry, Nettie Oliverio for the record. I have one other question. And I don't know where, this is a weird political time right now. But I've been wondering, there was an evolution where DEI was an important tick box for the cultural event grants. And I just, I've not been involved enough to know if that still remains. I know that's a little bit of a dicey subject these days, but frankly, it's important in our community. And so I don't know, how do you guys address that? What is that? Is that acknowledged but not acknowledged, or is there?
I think we're looking for representation in all of our programs. And so we're looking for community partners who also share the value of representation. It's not specifically outlined as a DEI initiative.
Get it.
As it's not in the arts and culture anymore, as it's not with community engagement anymore. Address, but not address your question.
Yeah.
For the record.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Mike Van Houten for the record. I think this is a great idea. Living close to Midtown and downtown, I know a lot of Midtown business owners who I guess maybe kind of felt a little left out last year of the process, and even with the Western Lights Festival. And so I think this is going to be really good for them. And I just wanted to reiterate again, just as a thought, to make sure that a Midtown business doesn't have to be a part of the Midtown Business Merchants Association, and that there's kind of an equal weight there. I know there's a lot of political things that go on with these merchants associations and who belongs to them and who doesn't. And so as long as, all the businesses get a fair chance, even if they don't belong to a merchants association.
I think it's awesome that you brought that up. That is why we're structuring this program the same way we ran it for the downtown program, which is that it's open to anyone to apply, because it's, you never know. And maybe a business can't afford to pay their dues, or maybe they don't want to pay dues. Maybe that district doesn't have dues. Not all of our districts charge membership dues. So we just wanted to have a really level playing field. And I will also address, so Western Lights is the big event that is trying to scale. So this year they've expanded to the Brewery District. We tried to get into Midtown, couldn't pull that off quite then. Plan is for next year to follow in the footsteps of Portland's Winter Light Festival, and really continue to expand that so that it benefits all of the districts within the area.
Awesome. One question, what event do we have in Midtown that'll be coming? since they're, Midtown is saying that they need things. What are they providing us? What information do they want?
Yeah, so Midtown's had a few different ideas that they've thrown out. Event wise, what I'll share with you, and I chat with Jamie regularly, like Jamie's at max capacity right now with Dancing in the Streets, like for the year. I mean, the idea of her, like when she first heard about this, she was like, I'm sorry, what? I had to do more events? Because that is a massive undertaking and she is but one person. And we all, we love boards. It is not necessarily a working board, it's an advisory board that they have. We love volunteers. We know the struggle that it can be to work with volunteers. So that's a huge part of why we're making this something that's open to anybody so that it doesn't just fall on the districts to produce the events. Midtown has expressed interest in a farmer's market. That's a bit of a challenge. Farmers markets, the folks who produce Riverside Farmers Market, we've talked to them on a variety of ideas to expand farmers markets in other areas. And they have a lot of data that shows that they shouldn't and why they won't. That's not to say that there isn't another purveyor that would want to spearhead a farmers market, but that's one idea that they've had. I know that they are interested in bringing back in a new way their First Thursdays events and tag teaming with the Nevada Museum of Art to make it, you go to the Nevada Museum of Art on First Thursday, that ends usually around 6:30 or 7. And then there's a ton of activity happening in Midtown. Jamie just doesn't have the bandwidth to do it on her own. And so they have ideas of things they'd like to see. But that's also where I come in. Think of me as like the matchmaker, if you will, matching promoters to neighborhoods, matching event concepts to neighborhoods. And we're really looking at things that are, what does that neighborhood need for its development? I'll highlight Ryan Goldhammer with Noble Pie. He's already doing
Cheney
this.
block party.
Yeah, Ryan out of his own pocket pays for the Cheney Street block party twice a year. It's a great event. They have great success. You have Ty over at Craft who does the TriLab event. That's an awesome event. He also does another one with Holland Project. So we have really cool concepts. I'm excited. RDA 2 also encompasses an interesting small section of Wells. It doesn't include most of the Wells Avenue Merchants Association, unfortunately, but it does encompass an area down where Holland Project, Leica, RPM, Magpie, Wild Market, they're all in that area. So, these events can kind of happen anywhere within RDA 1 or RDA 2, and through whatever community partners feel inspired and demonstrate the capacity to be able to produce them.
Thank you. And thank you. It's a wonderful presentation. You did a great job.
Thank you very much, Rachel. I was going to just add that maybe you know Kyle Schultz, but he is the data guru for Department of Tourism and Cultural Affairs in the I don't know what used to be the Wells Fargo building, but I guess it's now whatever the triangular building there to the south of City Hall is. But he has a lot of access to data sets and subscriptions that might be helpful in counting people.
Wonderful. We, Rachel McIntyre for the record, we do utilize Placer AI. That is kind of our data tool. JP manages that process for us, and we preset event footprints so that we can accurately track, as well as track how long they're staying. But Colin, I'll circle back with you on that because it would be great if he has any other resources that we might be able to pull from. Specifically, it's a little difficult to pull spend, like average spend. And there are free tools that are available through like the Arts Commission, Nevada Arts Council has one. They're a bit more ethereal than they are like, here is the data point. So.
Thank you so much. Any other questions for Rachel? Seeing none, we'll move on then to item B4, which is the presentation of the Redevelopment Agency tax increment financing, also a discussion only item.
I forgot this was me. I was like, this is me talking now. Ashley Turney, Assistant City Manager for the record. Mr. Vice Chair and Board, we have put forward this item as kind of a refresher for the board on tax increment and what redevelopment does as we get ready to gear up for your budget cycle. I gave this presentation at the chamber. This is also something that's helpful for any of the public that are watching, and I'll be going on a bit of a road show over the next few months at various bodies, just to help educate the public on what the redevelopment agency does and what TIF looks like. Reminder to this body, I'll roll through. This is likely old hat to all of you, so I appreciate your patience in going through this with me. And then as questions come up, please feel free. As a reminder, the purpose of redevelopment areas is really to revitalize blighted and underutilized space. We also focus on the business attraction, visual appeal of structures, creation of housing, growth of our residents, down to transportation. This investment in public space is something that's really important. Where we're pulling most of this and what it points back to is the overall quality of life enhancement for all of our residents. These specific things of redevelopment come across very clearly in the NRS that governs and guides what we do, and then further is defined by our redevelopment plan. The history of the redevelopment agency. Brian does a great presentation that's far more in depth than mine. You can go back and watch this at the Reno City Council and RDA meetings in August of 2024 when we brought back forward re-energizing the agency. Ultimately, what we need to know is we're governed, as I mentioned, by NRS 279. This allows for the creation of a redevelopment agency. And in 1968, the City Council created a commission on essentially helping save downtown. This is when strip malls started to be built. This was right after Parkway Mall was built and our downtown started to see an exodus. Our jewelry district was leaving. A lot of our larger retail in the downtown started to leave, and we needed to save downtown. This has been a recurring theme for many years. In 1983, they created the Redevelopment Area 1. This is our downtown area. 1990, we created a plan that helped us to identify more specifically what we were looking to do instead of just specific projects. In 2005, we created the Redevelopment Areas 2. As you know, this encompasses Midtown, 4th Street, the GSR, some other areas that are pocketed that go all the way over to Moana. Right after we got the Redevelopment Area 2 off the ground, we hit the Great Recession in 2008. As we know, Reno was hit, Nevada specifically was hit harder, faster, and took longer to recover than most any other space in the country. This sent us between obsolescence and the recession into massive property value drop and devaluation, which caused us to move into what we call negative increment, where we were not producing enough to pay our bills in the redevelopment area space. Slowly but surely, as property tax continued to climb back up, as you may know, we are subject to a 3% cap on residential property increase and 8% on commercial, which means from the drop when property values hit, especially in RDA 1, as we were really not diversified, it took us 9 years to get back to the cap. So as we know, costs continue to increase. And if we're functioning at that space, it takes us a long time to get back to even. Eventually, we started to see increment come back in. And in 2024, the redevelopment agency was re-energized, is what we like to say. And that is when the redevelopment board adopted the participation program and identified out the 5 areas in which we are supposed to go spend our energy and ultimately their money. As a reminder to this body, Redevelopment Area 2 expires in 2035 and RDA 1 will expire in 2043. As I mentioned, 5 things. We do more than that, but generally they go in these buckets. The first one is the Restore Facade and Tenant Improvement Program. As you may recall, last month when we brought forward the Downtown Action Plan update, this was a recommendation from Puma back in 2017. However, there were just no funds to be able to bring forward this program. And luckily through ARPA and now with redevelopment, we've been able to implement that program on an ongoing basis. The second thing we do is tax increment financing. The redevelopment body has given direction to me in no uncertain terms that we are not to take out debt and we are not to put the city and the redevelopment agency at risk. And they have moved forward and told us to look as a pay-as-you-go model. And we'll talk more about that when we get to the tax increment financing slide. The third space that we do is placemaking activation. This works well coming right after Rachel's presentation of talking about exactly what we're doing. Increasing the quality of life in each of the neighborhoods, and that placemaking is something that builds a sense of community and helps investment. Fourth thing we do is capital improvement plan. You may recall we talked about a few small programs where we had a little bit of increment last year. This year in March, you'll be seeing a much more robust capital improvement program come forward for your review and recommendation to the body. The last thing that we can do is property acquisition and disposition. We've not done this yet. However, you may recall late last year I came before you and we are having conversations with the relocation of the gospel mission. So this would fall into that bucket as well. Redevelopment Area 1, as I mentioned, is mostly what we know of downtown. The bid boundaries are slightly different than this, but it's a good encompassing to understand what we're looking at. Redevelopment Area 2, as I mentioned, the outliers, Midtown, some pockets along Fourth, and then areas out by Cabela's. Well, let's talk about tax increment financing and how this works. As you may recall from a property tax standpoint, for every dollar that is collected in property tax, 26% of this money goes to the city of Reno. When a redevelopment area is created by the body, we like to say that this creates the baseline. This is where the properties are frozen effectively for what the taxing agencies get. So that would be 1983 for downtown, 2005 for redevelopment 2. Anything of property value that increases above this base goes to the redevelopment agency to reinvest in those 5 programs that we talked about. The idea behind this is that all boats rise in high tide. And at the end of the redevelopment area, when we've fixed the blight, created more housing, increased the quality of life for all the residents, the valuation of all property is higher, and then a larger portion flows back into all the taxing agencies and the areas expire. So all of the agencies are getting their portion of the taxes as it sets at the baseline when the area is created. So the city of Reno gets their 26%, school district gets their 31%. So everyone is getting a something. And then RDA gets everything above that baseline until the end. As we talk about our tax increment financing programs, this body has seen 7 applications. And as you know, 5 of those are currently under gap analysis. We've denied 1 because they could not prove that they needed our help. There are 2 that have been approved, the Zero Comro, which was 200 units of townhouses, and then the GSR Arena Phase 1. As you know, this was the largest private investment in the Reno history. As this body knows, all of these projects will come before you now twice. You'll see them in the beginning to give us approval to go to gap analysis. And then once that comes back, you'll see it again for the recommendation to the RAB, or the RDA, excuse me. Again, as I've mentioned, our body has mentioned they want to pay as you go. What this means is that these projects will come in, they will be built, they will be assessed, they will pay their property taxes, and then the redevelopment agency will reimburse a portion of what their new property tax bill is in accordance with what was approved at the RDA meeting. So as a reminder, these funds, they're not drawing anything before they are assessed. They're not going into the piggy bank. And if they don't get built, they never get anything. So they're not pulling anything other than what is just their own particular project on their own parcel. From a redevelopment 1 financing standpoint, we have just less than $3 million in debt. And the great news is this next fiscal year, we'll be paying off our last debt payment. This is really significant because we're starting to see increment come in. We're hopeful that based off property tax values and projects, we will see a little bit more money than we previously expected. And we will have updates to you when we bring that capital project list forward. Our finance director is shoring up the property tax that she just got and tells me it's looking good. So we're excited about that.
And then Mike, for the record, the blue is the debt.
The blue is the debt. Yeah, the grayish blue up there is the debt. So you can see in 23, we had no monies at all in increment. So the yellow is the increment. Think of that as agency operation money and capital improvement money. In 23, we had no money to speak of. 24 was the first year we had a little bit. And that was, you know, like $100,000, little bit. And then this last year was the first time we had a little bit of money in which we had about $1 million in increment to identify. And half of that went to restore. And then the other half was for small projects. RDA 2. Oh, no, I'm lying. TIF example. Sorry. I went into this a little bit more in detail. Again, the TIF is funded exclusively through new increment that is generated when this project is built. There's no general fund money and there's no existing agency funds that are utilized. If they don't build it, they get nothing and no one is at risk. The RDA recommended that up to 90% of their taxes be reimbursed to them to help with the public improvements that they'll be doing along the river. RDA 2 expires in 2035, so their increment is only through 2035. This is very commonplace. People have had questions for me about, quote, why are we giving so much away? You start to see this when agencies get shorter in their lifespan of the areas. The money's just not there to be able to pencil for the deals. And it makes it to where if you don't give them a higher percentage, then they won't build it. And we have two very specific requirements in the NRS that require for all TIF projects that come forward. The first one is they have to utilize prevailing wage. That's a non-starter, it's in state law. The second one is they have to prove that there's a gap. Often there's a misconception that people come forward and they say, well, how much will you give me? And that's really not the question. The question is, how much do you need? And then the period of time is to discuss, how do we fill that gap? Is it 50% for 5 years? Is it 90% for 4 years? And that's where your advice to the body is going to be helpful based off what the professional consultants come back with. RDA 2 financing, they are in a better space. They're in a better space for a few reasons, but the first one I would say is there's a much more diversified real estate portfolio in RDA 2 compared to what was in RDA 1. Housing has really taken off in the RDA 2 space at a faster rate than 1, but we are seeing 1 start to come in with more properties. We have less than 10 years remaining now and a little less than $55,000 a year in debt. It should be noted that currently the $1 million obligation for baseball is paid out of RDA 2 through 2035, and the remaining will be paid out of RDA 1 till 2043, is the recommendation we have for the body that's made annually during their budget. As a catalyst project in RDA 2, as we mentioned before, there are no city funds that are committed upfront. This is not a loan. This is not an obligation. This is not a debt of RDA 2. If they don't build it, we are not out any money other than the consultant. One of the important deal points for this was the Fire Station 21 land will come to the redevelopment agency's ownership. We were previously in a lease in this property, and this will transition over. We're expecting a parcel map to be filed shortly. This was agreed to be a 90% reimbursement of their generated increment. Again, it will be the new increment from the arena, the sheet ice, parking garage, and the overwater gulf. So for example, if their tax bill is $100 and it goes up to $200, that $100 increase, they'd be eligible to get $90 back. They also agreed to a 5% donation from GSR to the city side to support youth sports and recreation. That will be paid from a different fund, again, over and above what is part of their TIP deal. Past projects of the agency, as we start to bring forward for your consideration capital improvement projects, we felt it important to remind you of some of the previous agency projects. The Riverwalk is one that we're very proud of and I think transformed a lot of our downtown sphere back in the early 90s. The baseball park obviously was a redevelopment deal. It's transitioned away and back. Parking gallery as part of the movie theater build out in the Palladio. West Street Plaza and a lot of our public spaces were also redevelopment projects. Restore, we mentioned, this body helped to recommend to the RDA $1 million in RDA funds. Previously, we had $1 million in ARPA to start this. Round 1 supported 30 locations and 13 new businesses. This round 2, that was supported from RDA money, $500,000 in RDA 1, $500,000 in RDA 2, supported 23 different projects. You can see great examples. Best Bet is a wonderful space of showing what was a boarded up motel into something that's a lively space in Midtown. I'm also very partial to Birdie's over on the corner of 2nd and Sierra. This was a boarded up antique mall that has now been transformed into a family friendly space. Rachel mentioned before with her activation conversations regarding placemaking, and this transformed public spaces into engines of belonging and economic vitality, proving that a city's greatest asset is the quality of life that it offers to its people. As we talk about some placemaking initiatives, some of these come down to a sense of belonging, and some of them come down to a sense of knowing where you're going. We utilized a lot of our kickstarting in the redevelopment space from the ARPA money. You'll see the Truckee River Vision Plan as well as the Virginia Placemaking Study were funded through ARPA, and we're currently in the space of implementing many of those recommendations. You'll see wayfinding coming along the river in downtown soon, new trash cans along the Riverwalk. The improvements to the West Street Market and Locomotion Plaza were funded by ARPA for the phase one. There are additional phases from these plans that could be funded with capital improvement funds from the RDA space if you make those recommendations in the future. Capital improvement projects, these came before this body during the budget cycle last year. The rail depot, currently half of it is underutilized because there is only one bathroom, and it does not allow us to open up the historic side in a different time frame than what happens on the Amtrak side. So this body made the recommendation and RDA agreed. We are at 90% design on the ADA bathrooms that will go in on the Amtrak side. And we expect that to be going out to bid in March as I look around for Dan. So we're excited to see that come forward. And there will eventually be an interlocal agreement that will come before this body for your recommendation. It's actually a requirement in state law that the city has to take ownership of these improvements and agree to maintain them. So we'll be looking for your recommendation and support on that in the future. We've identified a lot of other capital improvement projects that we've spoken about with this body. Trees, lighting, sidewalks, the Reno Arch. There are many needs and never enough money. So we'll be helping to prioritize and price those and bring those to you, as I mentioned, next month for your recommendations. Additional activities in the RDA, we know that things happen in the space that we are not directly responsible for, but they directly impact the work that we're doing. The great work of the Downtown Reno Partnership and their beautification efforts. They put wonderful planters along Virginia Street and some other side streets this summer and have moved it into winter activations. And they really add some pizzazz along the main drag. We also look at the improvements of some of our partners in the area, the J Resort Festival grounds, as well as the John Tulloch Business Building by the university. The Museum of Art, they have added a $60 million expansion that is located in RDA 2. 1 and 2, it's right on that border. Reno Revival is the Harris project we know has struggled and looks to be making a positive turn. One thing that I know Brian's always very excited about, and I think tracks closer than anybody else in the building, is the housing projects coming into the redevelopment area. This is something that the foot traffic has to come. The foot traffic supports everything else, and that housing will be something incredibly important. We've had 1,000 new units come online, and there are 1,500 units in the pipeline for redevelopment 1. This body's made the recommendation for a rebranding. As we mentioned, we're excited to be able to tell the world all the work that you're doing and to be able to broadcast it and continue. That's your rundown. Thank you for listening as I went over all the things that you already know, but we think it's important. And selfishly, I took some of your agenda time so that way we could help educate the public. So
thank you very much, Assistant City Manager Attorney. Questions for Ashley? I have one, Ashley, if I might. In terms of like the GSR project, just want to clarify that it is what they are eligible for reimbursement for is 90% of the TIF generated just by their project alone. Correct?
That is correct. Yes.
And then they agreed in the term sheet to an additional 5% donation. Does that donation come to the city directly or to the RDA?
The 5% will come to the city directly. It will not come to the RDA. And that one's effectively, I would say, a separate pot of money from them. They can choose to pay it from wherever they would like, but it will come to the city for us to help support youth activities and sports.
Thank you. My final question on this front is if you or Brian might speak to how, so far, most of our applications for TIF have come from developers in the for-profit side. And that's understandable and logical for a variety of reasons. But for example, with GSR, they asked for 90% reimbursement of their of the increment generated by their project, leaving 10% of the increment generated by their project theoretically, and then other examples of TIF generated elsewhere. What are the opportunities and the possibilities for other kinds of entities to apply to the RDA and sort of coming through this board for other kinds of applications for that TIF funding that isn't driven by a development per se?
So I would say that the redevelopment agency adopted those 5 areas of program that we talked about between restore, capital projects, TIF, placemaking, and property acquisition. And so really based off of how the NRS is written, our focus is to be using the redevelopment funds for investments. And the investments help to increase the property values of everything inside the RDA. And a lot of times those come from either the individual projects that are being built that we would help to reimburse them to get them off the ground, or they would go to your capital investment. The body has asked me to keep our agency running at an 80-20 split, where 20% is for operations and 80% is for capital. So I would say that's my long way of answering that other programs and groups will benefit from the capital projects that we bring forward. So an example is we've heard from all of council as well as many of our plans that say that the river is the gem. And that is something that we should be spending a fair amount of the capital investments in order to improve for generations to come, as the river has no dedicated funding. However, there are a lot of nonprofit groups that participate in and around. So I'll say KTMB for an example. They spend a lot of work on the river. Also, One Truckee River is something that they're constantly focusing on mitigation and erosion management. So that would be something that we're working closely with those groups as we bring forward capital improvement projects to help to increase what their mission is in a way that utilizes the funds as an investment account and not a piggy bank.
Awesome, thank you.
And Mike Van Houten, for the record, a property has to produce property tax in order to qualify for a TIF application, right?
Yes, if there's no property tax in which to reimburse, then there would not be a TIF deal. A good example is affordable housing projects. So there's a clear distinction between workforce housing and affordable housing. If someone applies for low-income housing tax credits through the state and they receive federal exemptions, they don't pay property tax. And so therefore they wouldn't be producing any increment.
Any other questions for Ashley or Brian on this front? Any online, Caitlin? I don't see any, but.
No, none online.
Seeing none, we'll share our thanks, Ashley, for that great presentation and move on to item C1 in today's agenda, which is a partnership update from the Downtown Reno Partnership.
Morning, everyone. Nathan DeGangi, Economic Development Director for the Downtown Reno Partnership, for the record. So the last meeting we were at, question was asked about downtown retail spaces and vacancies and wanting to get an inventory of that. And so that's something that we have a pretty good list of within the boundaries of the business improvement district. So it's not the entire RDAs, but it's a very good chunk of within the downtown core. So what I want to do is share one of the resources that we put together as kind of like the initiation of our retail attraction efforts with, which is going to become more and more common, getting interest of people that want to open a business downtown or move a business downtown as more of these activations take place, as there's more development, as the foot traffic comes and drives everything else. We want to be ready for that to provide these people that come to us interested, providing them resources. So one of the things that we shared with you last time was our State of Downtown report, which is just a very ubiquitous target of, it's just a collection of stats and data with very light narrative about what's going on within the core. And then this is the next thing that we worked on, which is it's kind of just a look at 19 different spaces that are available downtown. This is a living document. We're just in the process of updating it. This current version was completed back in July. And so as we update the State of Downtown report and we update this document, we're going to look into doing more collateral in forms of like leasing collateral or retail brochures. So I got some examples of retail brochures from our friend Michael Burney. And so we want to use highlight the activations and the foot traffic that generates, highlight the new developments, and then use this in combination with the State of Downtown report to kind of spearhead our retail attraction efforts. Once we have a more sustainable environment for businesses to come into downtown. So what I would like to do today is just go through some of these properties, and we can just look at them one by one. If anybody has any feedback or thoughts on, I'd love to get that. But just so you're all aware of some of the spaces that we have in our inventory that we would like to fill. So the booklet actually starts out with kind of some intro, talks about resources. So if we can just jump into that, starts with an index of everything that we have in there with a nice map. Next one, and then just kind of a highlight of different things that someone looking to open a business downtown should be aware of. We need to add in the RDA and the restore program to this because it's put together, though still very preliminary. So we just try to make it just a general overview of things that people would need to know. And then, of course, any small business, they should be aware of these different resources that are available to them before they go in and try to open up a business. So getting into it, right here on the corner of First and Virginia Street across the Masonic Building. When this was produced, they did have a ground floor space available, but that has since been leased. And so now they have the 10,000 square feet of space available on the second floor. I know they recently did some improvements to bring the building more up to code. They are looking at putting together a building improvement fund to help make their presence more sustainable. And so the 10,000 square feet on the second floor, it's really cool because it overlooks the river and City Plaza, but it's not really leasable in its current condition. And so there'd have to be some heavy TI to put into there. We have a great relationship with them. They're very responsive to stuff that we bring to them. The Woolworths building. So, that entire building is now vacant with the absence of junkies. And then they also have their basement, which when we reached out to the owner, this was the thing that they really wanted to highlight was the bowling and the full service restaurant capabilities of that space. So they do have that 14,000 square feet in the basement. And of course, the Woolworths second floor and beyond is basically a shell of what could be built out for office space or whatever use they would do. And then now, of course, the ground floor is available as retail space as well. If anybody has any comments on any of these, feel free to jump out. So, a lot of these are in different states of on the market, off the market. Do they have an actual representative? Will they return phone calls? Can you get information from them? This is a good example of ones that they had a representative for a little while who no longer is responsive about these properties. So we couldn't get much more information to include in here. And so these are things that, we just continue to work with our network and, ask them, say, hey, can you send us some stuff? Do you want to be included in this? And so Brian, I'll connect with you about updating this one because I think you said that the awning is coming down.
Fingers crossed, the awning is coming down.
The awning is coming down. So
quick question
yeah.
for you. And prior to the slide before on Woolsworth, are these the same owners? Do the same owners own
these
multiple?
These two, yes, these are both owned by Siegel, and the previous one is a Battle One Properties one. So largely, we see a lot of these are a collection of the same owners. So then here on the left, we have an LESU property, and you're trying to get more information for this has been a challenge. I recently got contact information for Yaya's assistant, so I'll reach out to them and see what they can provide as far as getting this space leased up, which is also completely vacant. On the other side, we decided we wanted to throw in at least a brand new retail space that has been built out, because those are available too in downtown. Generally, they are more difficult to get into because the new properties, the costs are going to be higher, the demand is going to be larger on those. So we included the retail space at 245 North Arlington in this one too. This one, the Byington building, they when this was put in, there was some uncertainty about the ground floor tenant. They have signed a renewed lease, and they are the recipient of restore funds, and they've been doing a lot of work on that building, so that's coming along. The reason we include that in this booklet is primarily for the second and third floor space, which could also be a good opportunity for being activated. And like I said, they were potentially looking at a new tenant when this was included, so they gave us the site map and everything, and that's changed just a little bit. The Horseshoe Building, another restore recipient, they redid the whole horseshoe sign and made it light up and look good again. They have on the second level a fully built out commercial kitchen, bar, balcony, and patio. It's essentially a turnkey space for someone that would want to go in and do something in that space. It was a New Orleans themed bar and restaurant for a little while, then it was a mini golf place for a little while. And then also same building on the ground floor, there is a former pawn shop that could be utilized for ground floor development as well. This is another interesting property, the Little Nugget. Kind of same thing, commercial kitchen, fully built out bar, and then they have the grandfathered unrestricted gaming license. This has received a lot of interest over the years, but nobody has looked to acquire it. I know it's both for sale and for lease. I think they are just holding out for the right tenant. And this is a single owner. That's not nobody. He doesn't own any other properties downtown. Another really great space in downtown, the former souvenir shop. When it was Fitzgerald's, it was a souvenir shop. It's been largely used for storage. Since then, they have about 5,200 square feet available. Challenging here is no HVAC, no bathrooms, and no partitions with that either. This one, another Iliescu property on the corner of Virginia and 5th Street, I believe, was formerly a pawn shop. Now it's vacant, and it just sits waiting for someone to come in and have a good vision for it. Right next to it is where the Isuzu Sushi is going to be opening soon. So, that'll draw some more activity in that area too. These are two other places owned by Siegel. Kind of, I like to think these are turnkey. On the left, the left side is the former Noble Pie Space, which has the fully built out commercial kitchen, bar. It needs some refreshing in there. When we toured it, it was a little dilapidated on the inside, but it could be a turnkey restaurant or pizza parlor. Pizza ovens are still in there actually. And then on the right, the former El Cortez Lounge, which actually looks really nice in there. It could be a really great turnkey bar, lounge, and even music venue space. This is one that I'm kind of surprised nobody has moved into yet, because it's really some paint and some spackle, and it'd be ready to go.
Nettie Oliverio, on the El Cortez Lounge, is that their old Trocadero from back in the day?
Do you know about that?
I'm not sure. It's either where the Faces nightclub used to be.
Yeah,
I think
It is.
I don't believe it is.
is
I
it
think the Trocadero room is in the backside of the lobby of the hotel, and I think it's
Did not
open. I don't think it connects.
Oh,
I think
okay.
it's still there.
Yeah. Okay.
I could be wrong.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I've not been into the residential part of the El Cortez, but I think you're right. It might be in the back, and it might just be kind of an open space. But I'm not familiar with the Trocadero like to learn more. The Senator Building. This is also Siegel Suites. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Another Siegel Suites. And so there's the 1,300 square feet that I think at one point was a coffee shop. When we looked at it, it was in pretty rough shape. And so that
It looks like it.
takes some substantial TI to on this one. And then on the right, the Pizzerino building, when it closed down, it had a fully functioning commercial kitchen and bar, basement space, and upstairs that could be used for storage. We don't know about the condition that's in now. It is part of the Riverboat property portfolio, so the same owner also has this. It is a separate parcel. I know the Riverboat is being taken back by the lender and it will be sold, and we would like to get in contact with them once they list it on the market and say, this is an opportunity that they could just sell off as a piece. It's actually a really cool kind of iconic downtown Reno building, and so another space that we would think would be easy to find someone for. Like you mentioned, the Oddfellows building, which has a lot of great work going on over there. I also call this the Nevada Leathercraft building sometimes, because that's who owned it when it used to be a 5-story building, and then they had a fire on the top floor. And back then you could just scrape off the top 2 floors and just continue using the usable space. So I think it's an interesting building. So this is the corner another former pawn shop space, 4,500 square feet, prominent location, prominent signage. And they are pretty responsive if you want to talk to them. And then there's also the second and third floor space that remains vacant there. I'm not sure what plans they have. And then
That's Ilieski as well.
Sorry.
Sorry.
The Di Giacomo building. The former One Up space. So it's been a former nightclub, 5,000 square feet, dedicated parking. I think this would be a really phenomenal retail store, just because it has the parking. It's large open space, and same thing, another Ilieski property. And then these are on 2nd Street. Oh, this is the former Doc Holidays pool bar, very close to the Aces ballpark. It's literally like 1 block away. They are also responsive. There would be some TI allowance and rent concession. Challenge with this space is it does need quite a bit of work to be brought up to code before a new occupant on there. But they did provide the floor plan for that, and it's just another space that we'd love to see, especially on that 2nd Street corridor, with new residential developments and all the baseball traffic. It'd be great to see something. Next one. The Mantra Glass building. So this is one that has been being actively renovated. This is part of Josh Chirot's portfolio. They provided the as-is layout and then the proposed restaurant concept. There was a potential tenant that almost went in there, and then they pulled out of that deal. So a very responsive owner, currently doing work on the property, and this is on that East 4th Street corridor that could use some really cool businesses too. So with that, those are all the properties that we've highlighted in the last version. We're going to add a few to it. Love to work with this body on identifying priorities, finding out problems. Kind of I always envision the next step of this would be to go through and identify all the issues and what it would actually take to bring some of these up to code, as far as cost estimates and things like that. But that is what we have in that. And then
and Nettie Oliverio again. So this is online for Downtown Partnership.
Yes, this is on.
So you're constantly updating as.
Exactly. Yeah. This is a living document. So we plan to update it, probably twice a year. And so we're just kind of the spring and the fall is kind of the cadence I expect to be updating this. And when people come to us and say, hey, we'd like some information about town, what's available, rather than just passing them off to a broker, we provide this to them. And so, interest is light. We've had maybe 3 in the past 3 or 4 months. We have a wine bar, a dance studio, a distillery, and so people that are looking around. I think what we're going to start seeing soon is people getting ready to make these, or at least evaluating the opportunities. And so when the timing is right, they jump.
Yeah, and so Nettie Oliverio again. So has this been linked out to like CoStar or or other commercial broadcasters?
So I have shared it with Ashley Young with CoStar. I don't think they would link to it, but we do, for the properties that are listed on the market with a LoopNet link, we do provide the LoopNet link in this document in PDF. and it's applicable. And this is something that, you know, with our State of Downtown report, I take it on tour and I give presentations to different real estate organizations and different groups that I invite. And so this is something else that we add to that tour that we take is our roadshow essentially.
Yeah.
So making them aware of, you know, what tools that they have, what the opportunities are, because they're the ones that are out there ultimately selling Reno, and we want to get them to have a little bit more of a focus on downtown. If we do some of the work up front for them, then that might make it a little easy for them to sell it.
Yeah, perfect.
Any other questions for Nathan? I don't see any online either. So with that, we'll just say thanks very much, Nathan, for your presentation on the information. That's very helpful.
Thank you.
And then we'll move in the agenda for time in particular to item D, committee member reports and announcements for the group here today. Any in the room from anyone? I want to just say one item that I'd like to invite any of the advisory board members to participate in is that on Thursday, April 30th, I'll have at the Nevada Museum of Art, one of the Black Rock Design Institute lectures that have been attended. They're primarily aimed at architects and landscape architects, but there has been some really good programming there that aligns with some of the work of the Redevelopment Agency Advisory Board, seeing examples of what other communities have done. So there will be a landscape architect named Michael Geffel speaking about his work in Portland as a consultant with a firm called Land Lab, and also he does the landscape design for the Portland Botanical Garden. So if anybody'd like to join that as my guest, I'd be delighted.
Yes.
Any other announcements or information from members of the advisory board? And seeing none, then we'll move to item E for a discussion of any future agenda items for the next meetings, the next of which is scheduled for Monday, March 2nd at 11 a.m. At City Hall. Going once.
I'd been out for the record. I just say for next month's meeting, I'm going to be in Nashville at a conference, and I'm hoping I can attend remotely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Member Van Houten. Any other agenda item topics? Seeing none, then we'll move to the last item on the agenda for today, which is to reopen public comment for anyone in the room or online who would like to share. Limit to 3 minutes. Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn today's meeting, February 2nd, 2026.
Nettie Oliverio, so moved.
Thank you.
Kenny, second.
Member Kenny. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Motion approved. Thank you very much. Next meeting will be at 11 a.m. on Monday, March 2nd.